Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to present this topic today because it's something that helps us understand not just economics as numbers, but economics as a part of real life. My presentation is about American institutionalism, a school of thought that looks at how laws, traditions, organizations, and even social habits shape the way the economy works. We'll go through four important economists who developed this idea: Thorstein Veblen, John R. Commons, Wesley Mitchell, and Walton Hamilton. I'll explain their theories, their work, and most importantly, how we still see their ideas at work today in things like big tech regulation, labor rights, and wage laws. So let's begin with what institutional economics actually is. You might be used to hearing in economics that people are rational, that we all weigh the pros and cons and always make the most logical decision to maximize our benefit. That's what neoclassical economics teaches. But institutional economists said something very different. They said that people are not purely rational, and more importantly, that our decisions are influenced by the environment we live in. That includes laws, schools, family traditions, religion, and government. What we call institutions. These institutions shape our behavior in powerful ways. So institutionalism is all about context. It doesn't look at the economy as a perfect machine, but more like a living system full of culture, habits, and power dynamics. For example, imagine you're trying to find a job. Are you really only thinking about wage? Number. You might care about flexibility, how your parents feel about your job, what your community expects, and even what kind of work is acceptable based on your identity. Those are institutions shaping your decision. This is what makes institutionalism super relevant today. Let's take a modern example: Google or Amazon. These companies didn't become massive just because they were more efficient. They also benefited from data laws, regulatory gaps, lobbying power, and consumer habits. None of that is explained by simple supply and demand. Institutional economists give us the tools to understand these things. They help us look at the bigger picture: how power, policy, and institutions influence outcomes. It's also helpful for understanding things like climate change, income inequality, or how gender and race affect economic opportunities. These aren't market problems, but they are economic problems. So, where did this way of thinking come from? American institutionalism began in the early 20th century in the United States. At the time, economic theory was dominated by classical and neoclassical thinkers who believed that markets always worked best when left alone, and that people were logical, isolated individuals. But institutionalists said, real people don't act like that. People are influenced by their surroundings. Plus, the economy isn't just made of buyers and sellers. It's shaped by governments, laws, labor unions, courts, traditions, and even corporate culture. They wanted to study how economic systems actually work, not just how they look in theory. Institutionalism has a few core principles that make it very different from other economic theories. Economics is embedded in society. This means markets aren't pure or separate. They're deeply influenced by politics, culture, and history. Institutions evolve. Just like biological systems, the rules and habits that guide the economy change over time. And these changes aren't random. They're shaped by power, conflict, and negotiation. Behavior isn't always rational. People follow habits, emotions, customs, and social norms. Institutionalists accepted that and made it part of their theory. Policy matters. Unlike classical economists who wanted a hands-off approach, institutionalists said government must play a role, not just to regulate, but to shape the economy in a way that is fair and functional. Institutional economics is also known for being very empirical and interdisciplinary. It uses tools from law, sociology, anthropology, and history. So instead of building abstract models, institutionalists collect data, study behavior, and use real world examples. They wanted economics to be useful in solving real problems, not just something that looks elegant in a textbook. That's why they often worked closely with lawmakers and social reformers. They weren't just writing theories, they were trying to change society. Let's start with our first key figure, Thorstein Veblen. Veblen was kind of a rebel. He didn't like how traditional economists ignored social and cultural issues. He thought that economic behavior is driven by status, culture, and class, not just money. He's most famous for his idea of conspicuous consumption, which means people buy things just to show off. Think of luxury watches, designer bags, or cars that cost more than some houses. Veblen said this kind of behavior is irrational, but very common, and it tells us a lot about how society works. He also introduced the idea of evolutionary economics, that economic systems change over time, just like species evolve. He thought we needed to study how habits and institutions grow and adapt. His books, like The Theory of the Leisure Class and The Theory of Business Enterprise, are critiques of both capitalism and consumerism. Next, we have John Commons, who took a more legal and policy-focused approach. He believed that markets don't work without rules, and that these rules are shaped by governments, courts, and labor unions. He said every economic transaction involves a bundle of rights: the right to own something, sell something, get paid, etc. Commons is one of the key people behind modern labor law. He supported things like minimum wage unemployment insurance collective bargaining. He didn't just talk, he helped write laws and worked with government commissions. His work, like Legal Foundations of Capitalism, showed how capitalism needs a strong legal system to survive. Otherwise, the powerful will take advantage of the weak. Let's move to Wesley Clare Mitchell, who was more interested in data than philosophy. He wanted to know why economies boom and crash and how we can predict or prevent that. Instead of guessing, he gathered huge amounts of data on prices, wages, production, and employment. Mitchell helped found the National Bureau of Economic Research, which still produces economic data used around the world today. He believed that if we want good policy, we need good information. His approach made economics more like a science, grounded in evidence. His books, Business Cycles and Measuring Business Cycles, created a foundation for how we understand economic fluctuations today. Now let's talk about Walton Hamilton, an economist and legal scholar. Hamilton argued that we can't understand economics without looking at law and regulation. He studied how monopolies form, how wages are set, and how governments can make markets fairer. He believed in using legal tools like antitrust laws and wage controls to protect competition and workers. He was one of the first to really link economics and law as inseparable fields. He said that unregulated capitalism leads to concentration of power, which threatens both democracy and fairness. Sound familiar? His ideas still influence how we talk about tech monopolies and market regulation today. Let's now look at how institutionalist ideas were used in real life. First, they influenced the creation of the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, in 1914. This agency was designed to stop unfair business practices, regulate monopolies, and protect consumers. Both Hamilton and Commons supported this kind of regulatory structure. Even now, when companies like Amazon and Google face lawsuits for monopolistic behavior, it's institutionalist ideas that shape how governments respond. They ask, is this company behaving fairly? Does it have too much control over markets or information? Another example is the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, which introduced minimum wages, maximum working hours, bans on child labor. This law was heavily inspired by Common's work. He believed labor wasn't just a commodity, but it was a human issue that needed protection. Today, when we talk about gig workers, living wages, or platform work like Uber, we're still using his ideas. To wrap it up, American institutionalism offers a richer, deeper way to think about economics. Instead of assuming perfect markets and rational behavior, it looks at the real forces that shape outcomes: institutions, laws, culture, power. Veblen taught us how status and habits shape consumption. Commons gave us the legal and labor foundations of modern capitalism. Mitchell made economics scientific with data and real-world cycles. Hamilton showed us how laws and regulation matter for fairness. Together, they change the way we think about the economy, and their work is still helping us today. Let's finish with a few questions to think about. What is an institution? Can you give an example from your own life? Why do you think markets can't always solve problems on their own? Do you believe companies like Google or Amazon need more regulation? Now we've come to the end. Thank you for your attention.